President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. And again, the chamber continues to hand the floor to the defense team for Nuji to continue putting questions to the witness. You may proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, before the break we were speaking about your fellow K4 members volunteering to go to the battle front. Assuming that K4 in June 77 consisted of about 288 people, and you said that half of K4 volunteered, would it be correct to say that about roughly 150 members of K4 went in October to the battlefront to fight the Vietnamese?
Yes.
The Vietnamese withdrew from Cambodia on the 6th of January 1978. So the fighting stopped for a while at that day. Do you remember how many of those roughly 150 K4 members returned from the battlefield?
I do not understand your question.
About 150 members of K4 went in October 77 to fight the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese withdrew at the latest 6 January 1978. Did any of those 150 K4 members who had been fighting return to their unit away from the battlefield?
I never saw soldiers who were sent to the battlefront returned.
So is it your testimony that almost all of those 150 members of K4 were killed during combat?
The soldiers who were assigned from K4 to the front battlefield, I could not say anything about that, whether they were alive or they survived, since they left.
Now, Friday, during your testimony, you said that you and possibly other members of K4 had no right to have arms. Can you explain to me how that corresponds with about half of your unit going to fight at the front?
President, witness, please wait, and the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Just a clarification, Your Honour. I would ask that if counsel could put the time period. Certainly when the witness was at the airfield, it was clear that he said there was no right to have arms, but as far as what particular period you're referring to, because the situation changed, so that it's clear to the witness.
I will rephrase my question. Mr. Witness, you gave testimony to the effect that you and others within your unit had no right to have arms, no right to wear arms. To which period did you refer?
At the time the war ended, that is 1975, weapons were removed.
So the removal of your weapons had nothing to do with you working at Kampong Chnang airfield, but it was done in 75, is that correct?
The weapons were removed before I was assigned to work at Kampong Chnang.
I understand, but those 150 members of K4 who went to the battlefield, surely they had weapons? Or were they going unarmed to fight the Vietnamese?
When soldiers who were transferred from K4 unit to go there on a voluntary basis, I did not know whether they were armed.
Have you ever heard, as a military person, that fellow comrades were sent to fight the enemy without arms?
As I have just said, those soldiers who were sent to the battlefield, whether they were authorized to carry firearms or not, I did not know, because by that time I had been removed from the said unit.
Let me rephrase then my question. In those roughly 7 years, including that 1 or 2 weeks that you said that you were commanding officer of K4, have you ever experienced comrades fighting the enemy without guns, rifles, machine guns, etc.?
Those soldiers who sent to fight, of course they would not send there with their bare hands.
That's what I thought, Mr. Witness. Let me ask a few additional questions relating to the period that you joined the armed forces in 1970 up until the last day that you were commanding officer of K4. In those around 7 years, did you ever refuse orders that were given to you?
Since I joined the army, I never received such an order.
Maybe something went wrong in translation. My question was, did you ever refuse orders?
soldiers never dare to refuse or protest orders from their commanders.
But you were a commander yourself. Did you ever give orders to your soldiers?
When there were works to be assigned to them, of course, the orders had to be given.
And orders, unless unlawful, had to be followed. Is that correct?
Since I joined the unit, no order was given in terms of any works outside the scope of the military duty.
In those few weeks, you said that you were commanding officer of K4. Did your men have roofs to sleep under? Did they have mosquito nets? Did they have hammocks in which they could sleep?
In Unit K4, a long building was made as a sleeping quarter, although there was no sleeping mat. There was also no mosquito net provided.
So when you were commanding officer of K4, would it be fair to say that the situation was roughly the same as when you were with K4 at Kampong Chnang airfield?
In Unit K4, and I can also say about while I worked in Kampong Chnang, the condition was the same.
When you were commanding officer of K4, did you give your men wages? Did you give them salary?
Soldiers did not receive any wage.
So again, there was no difference when you were commanding officer of K4 in terms of wages and when you were working at Kampong Chnang airfield. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed.
When you were commanding officer of K4, how was the hygiene situation? Did you provide your men with bathing facilities?
In Unit K4, and in terms of sanitation, I can tell you that even I personally did not have a blanket or a mosquito net.
Is it fair to say that when you were commanding officer, that situation wasn't much different from when you were at Kampong Chnang airfield?
Yes, that is correct.
Let me ask the question the other way around. Can you give us one difference in terms of working conditions, material, equipment, etc., between the time that you were commanding officer of K4 and the time that you were working at Kampong Chhnang airfield as member of K4?
President, witness, please hold on, and the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you may proceed.
I think the objection, Your Honour, is the relevance of this line of questioning. This witness has talked about being the commanding officer for 2 weeks in and around March 1977, and then at a later point in time, he's talked about, he's given evidence that he and his unit were tempered for about a 5-month period. And so I'm just wondering how relevant it is doing a comparison of the conditions when this witness was a commander for 2 weeks, a period of time where I believe on the evidence it's not the time that this witness and his unit were being tempered. They were being tempered later on in the year for about 5 months before going to Kampong Chhnang. So if the idea is that there was no discrimination at Kampong Chhnang compared to when he was a commander at K4, I think the comparison is better when they're being tempered at K4 rather than when he was a commander.
Well, it's our position that his unit wasn't tempered at all. However, leaving that aside, I think it's fair to make a comparison between the work of K4, of which he was commander in about roughly March 77, possibly longer, and the working conditions in 78 Kampong Chhnang airfield, of which the closing order says it was forced labor. We will dispute that, but that's another question. But I think it's fair to try to establish or determine which working conditions were in fact the product of forced labor, which working conditions were in fact the normal working conditions of soldiers within K4, within Division 310.
Sorry, was there an objection or was this an observation on behalf of the prosecutor?
I think that's correct, Your Honour. I think it was more an observation.
Then I'll move on. Thank you for your observation, Mr. Prosecutor. Can you give me one clear example of a difference in respect of working conditions, working times, available equipment in those weeks in March 77 and the period that you were at Kampong Chhnang airfield? What was a striking difference between those two periods?
At Unit K4, regarding the living condition and the necessities, including knives, hoes, and cattle for rice farming, and that was different from the living condition and working condition in Kampong Chhnang, which we were only distributed a hoe each in order to dig the ground or to clear the grass. The work at K4 unit started at 6 and we rested at 11 and resumed at 1. We continued working until 5. where in Kampong Chnang we had to line up at 4 in the morning to go to the work site and continue the working until 11. We resume at 1 again and continued working through 6 or sometimes 7 o'clock in the night. Or in some other instances, we continued working until 9 or 10 in the night.
I understand. However, when you were at Kampong Chnang airfield as of 15 January 78, was there ever a sense of urgency communicated to you and others in relation to the war with Vietnam? In the previous months before 15 January 78, tens of thousands of Vietnamese troops had crossed the borders. Was there some sense that the work at Kampong Chnang airfield had to be finished soon?
While I was working in Kampong Chnang, I never heard anyone talking about the Vietnamese crossing Cambodian territory. And at that time, I was working like other people in our respective unit.
Let me rephrase my question. You started working at Kampong Chnang airfield at 15 January 1978. What had happened 9 days earlier, 6 January 1978? Do you recall, in terms of the end of the war or the withdrawal of troops? Do you remember anything?
Answer: I do not know about it.
You were from the original North Zone, if I'm correct. There's a 6 January dam in the North Zone, the old North Zone. Do you know why it's called the 6 January dam?
Answer: I have no idea because I have never seen that dam.
You also gave testimony that a month after you had arrived at Kampong Chnang airfield, you were sent to Phnom Penh for 3 months education to become a surveyor. Did they tell you why they had chosen you to do this 3 months course?
Your Honour, it's not an objection. It was 2 months after he arrived at the airport.
2 months. Did they tell you why it was you, why you were chosen to be able to do this education in Phnom Penh?
I believe I gave my response to this question on Friday, so it is a repeated question. However, I would like to give my response again. At the time, there was an individual by the name Han. He knew me, and he asked that I was sent to the technical training. I gave my statement already on Friday.
I know you did, but Han was from Division 502. You were from Division 310. Did your commanding officer tell you why you were chosen to go to Phnom Penh for 3 months?
មុនដំបូងគេធ្វើប្រវត្តិ
First biography was gathered and made, whether one could be sent for the training. If one had some sort of knowledge, that individual could be sent for the training.
But why was it you? Did your commanding officer tell you why the choice had fallen upon you to become a surveyor at a high security airfield?
Answer: I do not know the reason. I was told that I had to go to Phnom Penh to participate the training so that I could obtain the training and came back and work.
But you said you have been a commanding officer of K4. Then while you said that your unit was tempered, but then all of a sudden it seems you were asked to go for this 3 months education training in Phnom Penh. Did they tell you why all of a sudden you were perceived as a loyal cadre again?
It is very difficult for me to give my response. However, I would like to give my answer as follows. Your question is why the trust was withdrawn from me after superiors were arrested. In K4, I was sent for re-education for 5 months, and afterwards I was transferred to Kampong Chnang. I stayed in Kampong Chnang for 2 months, after which I was sent to study how to survey the land. I gave my response already on Friday.
Let me ask it differently. Was it a promotion for you to become a surveyor, or was it a demotion?
Answer: one who worked to survey the land was soldiers, and there were superiors responsible for them. And as I stated earlier, people who work to survey the land were all combatants.
I'll move on, Mr. Witness, but not before putting to you that you have been a loyal revolutionary cadre from 1970 all the way up till 1979, and that you were never refashioned. Is that correct?
Answer: this is a repetitive question. You asked me again and again. It's very difficult for me to give my response, and this question is put to me in order to confuse me. Mr. President, please help.
ស្អីដោយសារនៅតុលាការនេះយើងប្រើពាក្យមួយគេហៅថា
President, Mr. Witness, before the chamber, witness is cross-examined by party or is examined by parties. And please respond to the question if you know. And if you don't know, you just say don't know. And as the chamber has informed party already, there are some questions which are prohibited by the chamber. And as you have seen, the parties across the bench has the right to put an objection to the question put by another party. And likewise, the chambers have the rights to deny the objection or grant the objection. And the last question was not objected by the party across the bench. You are here and you are being cross-examined by the defense team. So if you remember, you can give your response. And if you do not remember the question, you could ask the defense counsel to repeat the question.
I'll repeat my question, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, is it true that you have always been a loyal revolutionary cadre from 1970 all the way up to 1979, and that in fact you've never been tempered or refashioned?
Witness, I would like to give my response as follows. From 1970 to 1975, I was a soldier. Nothing happened on me. But later on, after 1975, as I stated earlier, in 1977, I was then a soldier, but I was refashioned and tempered.
Fine, Mr. Witness, I will move on. Do you know when the Division 310 Chief Un arrested? Do you know when he was arrested?
Answer. I do not know about the arrest. I only knew what I have told you earlier concerning the time that I was invited to a training and listened to the recording.
I understand, but I'm asking because there might be some confusion as to his day of arrest. Was he arrested on 4th of March 1978, or was he arrested a year earlier?
Answer. I do not know about the exact date that he was arrested.
I understand, but was it February, March 1977, or was it February, March 1978?
Answer. I would like to inform the chamber that I could not get the question.
Un, the chief of Division 310, of which you were a member for 9 years, was he arrested in March, February 1977, or February, March 1978?
Answer. Ta Kum and Ta Eun were arrested in 1977.
Very well. For the record, Mr. President, there is a document E3/1993, which would imply that Eun was arrested on the 4th of March 1978. But I'll move on. You were speaking about Ta Kim. Was that the other name of ex-deputy political commissar Sao Kun?
President. Please, Judge Lavenche, you have the floor.
Oui, Maître Copé, vous venez de faire.
Counsel Kope, you are trying to use a document. I haven't quite understood which document you are referring to. In order for the record to reflect what you're saying, let me point out that on the list of S21 prisoners, document E3/342 on page 491, at the entry 8971, mention is made of Bern alias Eun, member of Division 310, and the date of arrest is the 17th of February 1977. Let me also point out that we also have on record confessions of the person called Im alias Eun or Eun. These two documents, E3/1891 and the confessions, are dated 20th of February to the 14th of March 1977.
I agree, hence the confusion, because I have a document E3/1993, which is called the List of Important Culprits, which seems to be a 1979 Pol Pot Inkse retrial document, which says that Eun was arrested on the 4th of March 1978. That's why I was asking for clarification. But I'll thank you, Judge Laverne. But my question was about Ta Kim. Was he the same as Sao Kun? Do you know?
There was only one name for Ta Kum.
True, but was his real name Sao Kun?
Answer. I do not know his family's name. I knew only his first name, Ta Kum.
Do you know, Mr. Witness, what the relation, if any, was between Eun, Vung, Kim on the one hand and Koi Toon on the other hand?
Answer. The relationship between superiors, I have no idea.
Have you ever heard that Koi Toon was arrested because he was preparing a coup d'etat in January 1977?
Answer. I have no idea.
Have you ever heard that Koi Toon used forces from Division 310 to prepare for this coup d'etat?
Answer, I don't know.
Earlier this morning you spoke about weapons being transported, and when you saw that you were asked to mind your own business. Were these weapons transported to Phnom Penh in January 1977?
Answer, I could recall it. I asked the one who was transporting the weapons at that time. I asked him, and he told me to mind my own business because I was a handicapped soldier at that time.
I understand, but was that shortly before January 1977? The coup d'etat was supposed to take place in January 77, and those weapons were shipped or sent just before that?
Your Honour, I was just, the objection is in relation to the question. It's a leading question, and I'm wondering where the information is based to put this question to the witness.
I'm not making it up, Mr. President. It's extensively documented by Keenan in the Pol Pot regime that the attempted coup d'etat was supposed to take place on the 17th of January 1977. But I'll move on. Because of time, Mr. Witness, I think you were also quite familiar with a town in the north of Cambodia, Siem Reap. Were you at one point in time stationed in Siem Reap?
Answer, I did not hold any position in Siem Reap province.
But in your DC camp statement, I read that you have been in Siem Reap at one point in time as a soldier between 1970 and 75. Is that correct?
Answer, I went to Siem Reap, that is fact. But it was in early 1973, not 1975, as mentioned by counsel.
Fair enough. Do you know what happened in Siem Reap on the 25th of February 1976?
Answer, I did not know.
Have you heard around that time of reports of military uprising and bombing by jet fighter planes in Siem Reap? Have you heard anything about what happened in Siem Reap in February 76?
Answer, I did not know in 1976 what happened in Siem Reap.
Have you heard of intensive fighting in the remainder period of 76 in the area of Siem Reap, fighting between various factions of the Revolutionary Army?
ខ្ញុំបាទผมដែលដឹង
Answer: I do not know.
Then I will return to what you said about the weapons being transported or weapons being taken. Can you do your best again and try to remember when exactly you were told to mind your own business?
Answer: I do not recall the exact date, month, and year, but as I said, I witnessed that weapons were being transported. The vehicle stopped in front of me. I asked the guy where the weapons were sent to, and I was warned that I had to mind my own business.
Do you know how many months that was before you became the K4 commander?
President: Witness, please hold on. International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Your Honour, perhaps the question should be how many months it was before or after he became the K4 commander. So I object to the question.
I'd be very happy to rephrase. Mr. Witness, how many months before or after you became commander did you see weapons being transported, and were you told to mind your own business?
Answer: I do not recall the date and the month exactly because it happened a long time ago.
Maybe I'm wrong, but your position as commander seems to have a relation to the arrest of the previous commander. So the day that you became commander might have something to do with the moment that you saw those weapons being transported. Can you do a little bit your best and try to remember when you were told to mind your own business?
Answer: when I was warned that I had to mind my own business, it was long after that I was promoted to the head or chairman of K4, so it was long after that time.
Let me help you a little bit. Mr. Witness, there is evidence that suggests that your predecessor, the commander of K4, was attending a general staff meeting in October 76. He was arrested in March 77. Were you told to mind your own business between October 76 and March 77?
បាទខ្ញុំបានចាំ
Answer: I do not recall it.
I'm seeing that it is 4 o'clock, Mr. President. Maybe it's time to stop.
បាទ
President. Thank you, Council. The hearing today comes to an end. The hearing will be adjourned now, and we will resume tomorrow on 16th of June 2015, starting at 9 a.m. Tomorrow, the Chamber will resume hearing this witness, Cao Lue. And the Chamber would like to inform parties and the public that the next witness is 2TCW901. However, because of the arrangement or the scheduling, the Chamber will hear 2TCW930 before 2TCW901. So please be informed. The Chamber would like to express its sincere thanks to you, Mr. Cao Lue. The hearing of your testimony has not come to an end yet, so you are invited to be here again at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and it will not last longer than one session or one morning. Court officer, you are instructed to work with vessels to send Mr. Cao Lue back to the place which he is now residing or staying, and please invite him to be here again tomorrow before 9 a.m. Security personnel are instructed to bring Mr. Nguyen Chien Kieu Sampon back to the detention facility and have them returned tomorrow before 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ